by counsel is before Dr. Shafer is present, is before all jurors and the alternates are present as well. Good morning again. Good morning again, Dr. Shafer. Sir, do you acknowledge you're still under oath and still sworn to tell the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. This will be a resumption of direct examination, Mr. Waller. Thank you.
Your Honor, is it possible to dim just the third bank of lights, the third switch?
Mr. Sale? Is
Thank you.
that the one?
Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Shafer, okay, just again, so as we look at future models you've created, so the red line here indicates the blood levels, and here the green line as it relates to Lorazepam relates to the 0.169 of the drug Lorazepam found in the coroner's toxicology findings. Is that correct?
Exactly right.
And so based on your modeling premised on the 0.169 in the femoral blood, the 4 milligram dosage was not possible. There was more in the body. Is that correct?
Correct. If this had been the model.
Objection mischaracterized. It's not that it's not possible. There's more in the body. Is it?
I'm going to sustain the objection, strike out the last answer, disregard it. You may re-ask.
Go ahead and please explain the chart.
Well, is that a question?
Could you please go ahead and explain the chart?
Thank you.
Yes. If this had been the total that Michael Jackson received, the femoral vein concentration should have been here, which is approximately 0.03. In other words, this is what should have been measured down here, not this concentration up here.
Can you explain that again, please?
If this accurately describes the doses of all the drug that Michael Jackson received, then on his examination, the coroner should have found this level. That's what the coroner would have seen if this is what Michael Jackson received.
And when you said this level, you're pointing to the... Whoops.
When I say this level, I'm pointing to this point right here, and you have to read all the way back here. If that's 0.05, this is, let's say it's half of it, 0.025. That's what that is. That's what the coroner would have seen when he did the autopsy.
And you're pointing to the 12 o'clock.
Yes, at 12 o'clock here, because there at that time everything stops. Circulation stops. And so everything is frozen at this, the clock stops at this point in time.
And with this simulation, assuming only 2 doses of 2 milligrams each, you never see a reading reaching 0.169 in the femoral blood. Is that correct?
His witness.
It's an expert.
This is an expert. Overruled. You may answer it.
Correct. The level is clearly below, and below by about threefold.
Now, did you conduct a simulation which, based on the data available to you and based on your pharmacokinetic modeling, would explain a finding of 0.169 in the femoral blood?
Yes, I did.
Going to the next slide, here entitled 10 doses of 4 milligrams each. Could you please explain these findings?
Yes. In this case right here, what I have modeled is the administration of a 4 milligram dose. That would be the amount that's in 1 cc of drug, 1 milliliter of drug.
And this is by intravenous?
By intravenous injection. And I'm suggesting that one was given at 0, which would be midnight. Another was given right here, half an hour later, half an hour later, half an hour later, half an hour later. And basically, with continued dosing until you had given 10 milliliters, which is an entire ampule. You would be able to stack these doses up so that when the levels start to drop, they continue to drop, and you would see this number that was observed on autopsy.
And in this simulation, did you set out with one of the variables or the assumption of one of the variables being that it was one vial of lorazepam.
No. In this simulation, the only number I have to work with is the 0.169. Most simulations, you know the dose. It's on the medical record. There is no medical record. So I can't simulate what was done because there's no medical record. All I have is the concentration on autopsy. So I set out to see, is there a dosing regimen, a sequence of regular doses, consistent with this time period when Dr. Murray was trying to get Michael Jackson off to sleep, that would have generated the number seen on autopsy? And the answer is yes, there is a dosing regimen that explains this.
And I want to show you People's 137. It's an empty lorazepam vial that was previously testified to. Whoops. I'm not going to change that now that it's working. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may. Do you want us to put on the lights?
That's fine.
Oh, we should, because we're away from the chart for a minute.
Showing you what was earlier marked People's 137. You recognize that as an empty lorazepam vial?
Yes, it is.
And what is the concentration, what is the contents of the vial, assuming obviously it had been full?
So this is a vial which contains 10 milliliters of drug, and each milliliter of drug has 4 milligrams in it. So 4 milligrams per milliliter, the same as a cc. 4 milligrams per milliliter times 10 milliliters is 40 milligrams. So there's 40 milligrams of drug inside this empty vial. There were inside that vial before it was removed.
And again, as you described with the propofol vials, it has the same rubber stopper and metal or aluminum seal around it?
Correct.
Then this simulation, as represented in the slide on the screen, does reach the 0.169 femoral blood at about the noon hour if this dosage was given.
Yes, it reaches the correct level that we have from autopsy, and it's consistent with the quantity of drug in a single vial of lorazepam.
Now, you're familiar through your research and your expertise in this area regarding lorazepam and its basically its molecular structure?
Yes, I am.
And is it actually found in 2 different forms?
Correct. There's lorazepam, which is the drug, and then there's the metabolite, the thing that's produced by the liver when lorazepam goes through the liver. And that's called lorazepam glucuronide because the liver attaches a little sugar to the lorazepam so that you can send it out with your kidneys. So the liver attaches a little sugar molecule to it, and that creates lorazepam glucuronide, a metabolite of lorazepam.
And looking at this slide, Dr. Shafer, first to the left, this molecule labeled lorazepam, and then to the right side, lorazepam glucuronide. Can you kind of just describe for us in simple terms what we're looking at here?
Right. This molecule called lorazepam, that's the drug itself. That vial that I held a moment ago contained this molecule, lorazepam. That's the molecule that causes the drug effect. That's the molecule that makes you sleepy. This molecule right here, it's the same molecule. You see, you can find these various things on both molecules. This piece down here shows up down here. But it's got this right here attached to it. And what that is that's a sugar molecule. So the liver attaches this sugar molecule to it, and that creates Lorazepam glucuronide. Glucose being sugar. Glucuronide means with a sugar attached. So this is the drug that causes the drug effect. But this drug cannot pass out in the urine. In order to get rid of Lorazepam, the liver converts it to this molecule, which doesn't have any biological activity. That molecule will not make you go to sleep. But it will go out in the urine. So the liver and the kidneys kind of work together to get rid of Lorazepam, this being the Lorazepam metabolite here.
And going then to this slide, so Lorazepam, as you indicated, this molecule labeled Lorazepam is actual, what we would know as the drug that has the effect on your body.
Exactly right. This is what's in this vial here. And that's the molecule that makes you sleepy.
And it's the drug, Lorazepam, that was measured by the coroner's toxicology, resulting in a finding of 0.169 in the femoral
Correct.
blood.
When the coroner measured Lorazepam and found 0.169, this is what the coroner measured. And in our own research at Stanford, when we measure Lorazepam, this is what we measure.
Now, going forward then, Lorazepam glucuronide, you said, is the metabolite. And can you kind of explain what is shown here with the going from the Lorazepam, the drug, and it being processed into Lorazepam glucuronide, the metabolite? Could you just explain simply that
Yes.
process?
So the drug, which is seen here just a little bit as a ghost, what happens is it goes through the liver, and the liver attaches this glucose molecule to it. And when this glucose molecule is attached to the Lorazepam, it first makes it so it's inactive. It doesn't make you sleepy. So the molecule is inactive, but additionally, because of this glucose, this molecule can go out in the urine. So the liver converts Lorazepam to Lorazepam glucuronide.
Now, did you also have an opportunity to review the defense testing results from Pacific toxicology related to Lorazepam in the stomach?
Yes, I did.
And I have defense exhibit. I'm going to switch over to the Elmo. Yeah. Showing you what was earlier marked defense, I believe it's GG. And I'm actually going to mark the People's copy. I believe it's People's 218, Your Honor.
Next, 218. This is the same as GG, but for
Well,
your
there's
purpose.
the copy we received has additional handwriting on it. Showing you People's 218 with the copy provided, the people has urine crossed out. Do you see that, Dr. Shafer?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay. But going with either one as to the findings, I'll show you People's 218. Now, and again, this is from PAT Tox or Pacific Toxicology, showing gastric contents 634 nanograms per milliliter. Is that accurate?
Correct.
And in order to determine what Pacific Toxicology was testing for, were you able to obtain a copy of their procedure manual?
Through you, yes.
Did you actually request it at Pacific Toxicology?
Yes, I did.
Did they provide it to you?
No.
And did I subsequently get you a copy of their standard operations procedure document?
Yes.
I'd like to ask that I believe it's a 10-page document, Your Honor, be marked Peoples 219 for identification.
Yes.
Now, showing you what was marked, let me ask you first, Peoples 218, you see where it's noted in Pacific Toxicology's test that there's a positive finding, Lorazepam detected 634 nanograms per milliliter, test performed on gastric contents. It also lists to the left the procedure was through benzodiazepines, apparently urine, but that's crossed out. Do you see all that?
Yes, I do.
And once you obtained the standard operations procedure from Pacific Toxicology, were you able to conclude whether they were testing for Lorazepam the drug or both Lorazepam the drug and the metabolite, which you refer to as the glucuronide?
Yes, I was.
And going to the first page of Peoples 219, this, again, Pacific Toxicology, entitled Standard Operations Procedure. Does this first paragraph specify that their results of 634 nanograms per milliliter actually included both the drug and the metabolite?
Yes.
And can you explain to us what is shown in this document that revealed that to you?
It's the very first sentence of the document. Here's the word Lorazepam. I'm going to skip the other benzodiazepines and just read that word as I read the sentence. The benzodiazepine Lorazepam is recovered from urine by solid liquid extraction following enzyme hydrolysis of conjugates with beta-glucuronidase. So this was done after enzyme hydrolysis of conjugates with beta-glucuronidase.
And what does that mean?
Beta-glucuronidase converts the metabolite, the glucuronide, back to Lorazepam. Beta-glucuronidase removes the sugar. And when you remove the sugar, you have Lorazepam again. So the very first sentence of this document says that they first took the contents that they were measuring, removed the sugar from all of the metabolites, and then measured it for Lorazepam.
Now, then, based on your receipt of their procedure and showing what was tested, both the Lorazepam and including the metabolite, in this diagram, then, as you indicated, these two separate molecules, their results of 634 nanograms per milliliter actually includes both the drug, as depicted in this slide on the left, plus the glucuronide, which is not the drug, but rather the metabolite.
That's correct. It includes both the active form of the drug, Lorazepam, but it also includes this thing here that the liver makes, which is the drug plus this sugar molecule over here. Both were included in that 648 number.
And why was it that you were seeking out this standard operations procedure from Pacific Toxicology?
I was seeking this out because you expect the metabolite to show up in the stomach. That's completely expected. And I thought that perhaps the number that was measured was almost entirely just the metabolite.
Which means the 634 nanograms per milliliter, if you're looking just at the drug would be an inflated number.
Substantially inflated, yes.
Now, the results of the defense testing do show that lorazepam was found in the stomach, even if it was an inflated number, correct?
Correct.
And how did, assuming intravenous administration...
Dr. Shafer is making a gesture with his hand.
May I ask you a question?
Not me. You could probably ask Mr. Walgren. You want to clarify something?
Yes, yes.
You can inquire, Mr. Walgren.
Could you please clarify what you need to clarify?
What you said was that, thank you. What you said was that what I concluded was that lorazepam was found. We don't know what it is precisely because both things are there. It may have just been lorazepam. It may have been lorazepam glucuronide. We don't know from the information that we have because both were measured because of the treatment, because of the removal of the sugar molecule. Both were measured. I just wanted to clarify.
As far as making a precise breakdown, you mean?
Correct.
Okay. But you would, based on the science and the literature and what lorazepam does as far as a pharmacokinetic modeling, you know there's glucuronide included in that number of 634
Yes, absolutely.
nanograms per milliliter.
Yes.
But the specific toxicology results don't differentiate. So as far as ascribing a particular number to both the drug and the glucuronide, we don't have that information.
Correct.
Now, you're aware from Pacific Toxicology's findings, however, that they did find lorazepam in the stomach.
They found both in the stomach.
Correct. Okay. And how would that arrive at the stomach?
So to understand how lorazepam gets in the stomach, I'd like to track a molecule of lorazepam through the body for just a moment.
Going to this slide, is this...
Again, to orient, this is the same slide that I showed before.
Your Honor, could we dim the lights, please? Just the third.
Seo?
Thank you. Please.
This is the esophagus coming into the stomach. We have here the liver, and we have the gallbladder up here, and the portal circulation all appears here. This is the esophagus, this is the stomach, the small intestine, and the large intestine.
Going to the next slide. What is shown here, Dr. Shafer?
What I want to do here now is take a look underneath the liver to explain how the gallbladder sits. This is looking underneath the liver. The stomach is here. This is the gallbladder. And the gallbladder is attached to the biliary system, the system the bile flows through right here. And it comes down here and it drains into the small intestine right after the small intestine sort of breaks away. It doesn't break away. But let me say right at the beginning of the small intestine, just beyond the stomach, at the start of the small intestine, that's where the gallbladder and the bile drain into the intestine. So this is the gallbladder. This is the bile duct shown here. Here's the small intestine. Here's the stomach, and this is the liver up here. I also want to point out that there's a blood supply to the liver, and it has two blood supplies. There's an artery right here called the hepatic artery, and there's a vein, this blue piece right here. This blue piece here is the portal vein. This large blue right back here is the vena cava. That's what's going right back to the heart. But this is the vein going to the liver.
Now, assume lorazepam is given intravenously. How does an injection, for example, in the arm or but by IV, how does that get into the stomach from an IV administration of lorazepam?
So first it's injected into the venous system, as shown here. And then it comes into the liver, and this is the lorazepam molecule. It comes into the liver through either the artery that goes through the liver Or it's also in the veins. It's in all the veins in the body. So the vein that goes to the liver will also have lorazepam. So between the artery and the vein that lead into the liver, this molecule of lorazepam will then enter the liver. This is an intravenously administered molecule coming in by way of the artery and the vein.
And what is depicted in this next slide?
Here, you can see the lorazepam molecule in the liver. It comes in through the blood supply of the liver, and it goes into the liver.
And again, just to be clear, what we're talking about is the drug, the actual lorazepam molecule.
This is the active drug, the stuff that's in the glass vial, now going into the liver.
And once it goes into the liver, then what happens?
So this is a little hard to see, but this is lorazepam, and here is the lorazepam with this little sugar on it. So the liver converts lorazepam to lorazepam glucuronide. The liver is taking the lorazepam molecule and adding a sugar to it. That makes it possible for you to then get rid of the molecule in the urine.
And is there literature that documents the fact that the lorazepam or lorazepam glucuronide would then go into the bile ducts and gallbladder?
Yes, that's what this is. There is substantial literature on this subject.
Okay. And well, let me just go through this next slide if you could.
So what happens is you now have this lorazepam glucuronide molecule in the liver. Where does it go from there? About 75% goes out of the liver by means of the vein, the hepatic vein that leaves the liver. But about a quarter of it goes into the bile. And here I have in this black line the lorazepam glucuronide going into the bile, and it either goes into the bile duct here or it can go into the gallbladder and just be stored there. But about a quarter of it does not go out in the vein. It goes into the bile, as shown here. And the bile then drains it right into the intestine at the junction between the stomach and the small intestine.
And then from there, can you describe how, if you take lorazepam via IV administration, how it would then end up in the stomach?
Slosh may not be a very medical-sounding word, but it sloshes into the stomach. The bile's coming in there. Most of it goes down into the small intestine, but some sloshes back into the stomach. That's why vomit is green. Sorry to put it that way, but that's the reason. And so these are showing the lorazepam molecule being distributed throughout the stomach. But it's lorazepam glucuronide. It's the metabolite that has been created by the liver that then sloshes into the stomach as part of the bile.
And the rest?
And then the rest, you can see here, I've tried to put the little molecules coming down here. The rest flows down the small intestine and into the colon. So 25%, a large amount of the lorazepam is converted to lorazepam is converted to lorazepam glucuronide. 25% of that goes into the bile, and from there it goes right into the intestinal tract. So that includes a fair amount of drug being delivered directly to the stomach, but the drug being lorazepam glucuronide.
And this depicts then kind of the path that it would take in this final slide?
Correct. 25%, about a quarter, of the drug winds up going into the intestinal tract. And that's how lorazepam gets into the stomach, in the form of lorazepam glucuronide. That's how lorazepam, in the form of lorazepam glucuronide, gets into the stomach.
Then, based on your understanding of pharmacokinetics and in this field, is it expected to get a positive reading for lorazepam in the stomach?
100%.
Okay. That's an expected result.
Absolutely.
And again, an expected result with the administration being via IV administration.
Correct.
Now, based on, back to the findings of Pacific Toxicology, that they concluded, without differentiating, but concluded that there is 634 nanograms per milliliter. That result, let's just take that result standing on its own, 634 nanograms per milliliter. Did you calculate that out to be 0.047 milligrams?
Correct. There's only, if you take the concentration and multiply it by how much fluid there was, it winds up being this rather trivial amount of Lorazepam.
And the visual depiction at the top of the slide, does this represent to the right literally 1/43rd of a single 2 milligram tablet that was found in the stomach?
Yes, it does. I actually did the mathematics so that was in fact 1/43rd in terms of the area. It involves taking the square root of 1/43rd, but yes.
Okay. So you're saying, so actually visually...
Visually, that's correct.
This literally is 1/43rd of a tablet?
Correct.
And that's what was found in the stomach?
Correct.
Okay. Now, this slide summarizes your conclusions that the finding of lorazepam glucuronide in the stomach is expected?
Absolutely.
And what other conclusions do you draw?
Well, the other conclusion is that so much lorazepam glucuronide, 25%, goes into the intestine that most of this is the metabolite. It's not lorazepam itself. This is mostly metabolite. The true amount of lorazepam is much, much smaller.
When you say the true amount of lorazepam, you're saying that the actual drug lorazepam...
Active drug. The active drug is much smaller than this. And given that this number represents an extremely small number, mostly metabolite, the results of Pacific Toxicology prove that Michael Jackson did not ingest lorazepam.
Objection. That's mischaracterized actually what's on the board. I believe you need to finish that.
I'm going to sustain the objection, strike out the last answer, disregard it. Ladies and gentlemen, you may ask the question, Mr. Walgren.
Based on the findings of Pacific Toxicology and the findings that amount to 1/43rd of a tablet in the stomach, do you, based on your expertise, find any supporting information to support the theory that Michael Jackson orally ingested tablets of lorazepam?
There is not a...
Well, at what time?
I'll get to that. Thank you.
Well, I think you've got to put that in the hypothetical, so in the opinion. So the partial answer stricken, disregard. Re-ask.
What time period are you talking about?
In the time period for several hours prior to his death.
Okay. So for what's several hours?
6 hours.
And you're placing time of death at around noon.
Let me just do a little math here for a second. Let's go 4 hours.
4 hours.
Let's go 4 hours.
And you're using time of death as being roughly noon.
There was a cough. The witness...
We're changing it from 6 to 4.
Objection, argumentative.
Well, I didn't.
Just a moment.
I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
I understand.
Yeah.
There's some coughing, and people are entitled to cough.
Yeah.
So I need the question re-asked, please. Go ahead. The objection is sustained.
You're assuming time of death at roughly noon.
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying that during at least 4 hours prior to that.
Yes.
Okay. So you're saying from a window of 8 o'clock a.m. till 12 noon.
Yes.
Okay. The findings of Pacific Toxicology, do they support that Michael Jackson ingested orally tablets of lorazepam during that time period of 8 a.m. to noon?
No, they disprove it.
And in a previous hypotheticals to witnesses, Mr. Flanagan has asked witnesses to assume the ingestion occurred at 10 a.m. Would this disprove that Michael Jackson ingested orally Lorazepam tablets at 10 a.m. as presented by Mr. Flanagan in earlier hypotheticals?
Absolutely.
And what if you go earlier than 8 a.m.?
I would want an opportunity to, that's why I brought my laptop, I'd want an opportunity to do a little bit of mathematics to take part of understanding the kinetics is to understand how tablets break apart and how long it takes for tablets to break apart. I can do that calculation in about 5 minutes, but I would actually have to do the exact calculation. It is a calculable number, and I'm happy to do the calculation to see what it is.
Okay.
But there's no chance at 10 o'clock, and but midnight the night before, it's entirely possible.
And would you characterize the amount in Michael Jackson's stomach, the 634 nanograms per milliliter or 0.047 milligrams? Would you characterize that amount as trivial?
Yes, it's trivial.
Now, I want to get into a different area, Dr. Shafer, and that is in your expertise in regard to simulating the responses to drugs.
Yes.
And as you indicated, I believe on your first day of testimony, you have significant expertise in simulating the responses to various drugs?
Yes, I do.
In fact, that's been part of your research and part of your academic career for at least the last 25 years?
Yes.
If a researcher or academic seeks out an expert in this field to conduct this type of modeling, isn't it true you would be one of probably 2 people in the world that they would seek out?
It's a small community, yes.
And again, now we're getting into the science of specifically pharmacokinetics as it relates to propofol.
Correct.
May I have just one moment, Your Honor?
Please.
And I realize you mentioned this before, but as we get into the pharmacokinetics, can you again just kind of explain to us what it is before we get into the modeling as it relates to propofol?
So, again, pharma, drugs. Kinetics, motion. In pharmacokinetics, we're looking at drugs in motion in the body, and specifically, how does a certain dose of drug give you a certain concentration? And as you saw in the Lorazepam simulation, it's not just the concentration as one number, but the concentration over time, as the concentration rises and falls. That's what pharmacokinetics tells us.
And then with that, you could predict, for example, how much propofol would be in the blood after a particular dose.
Correct.
And I think you had mentioned this is one of the courses you teach at UCSF?
Correct, it's part of that.
And then again, just to explain to us the difference then between pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics.
All right. So again, pharma is drug. Dynamic, from Greek dynamikos, is power. And it's about the power of the drug, or in other words, how much effect does the drug have? How powerful is the drug in your body? Is pharmacodynamics. And it talks not about the concentration of drug, but the power, the effect of the drug in your body.
And again, these are based on the mathematical models that you work with in your research on a daily basis.
Right. There's basic concepts, but to be useful, it has to be mathematical. Equations that you solve in order to figure out first the concentration and then the drug effect. And it has to come down to mathematics in order to have a number you can work with.
And what does this slide show, Dr. Shafer?
So this shows the linkage between the two. You give a dose of a drug, and the pharmacokinetics is used to tell you what is the concentration. Now, I should mention that this, by dose, I mean all doses. You take all the doses and you put them in, and you just call that the dose. Maybe a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit later. That's the dose. Whatever was given at any time is the dose. The concentration that you predict is not one number, but it's that curve over time. It's the concentration at every point in time following the dose, because the concentration will rise and fall. And that whole curve is what the pharmacokinetics predicts. The pharmacodynamics then says for any given concentration, what's the drug effect? Concentration drives drug effect. That's what the body sees. What is the concentration? And that's what the pharmacodynamics tells you is for any given concentration, what is the drug effect? Since the concentration is changing over time, the drug effect will change over time. So this right here is dose, but it's all the doses over time. This is concentration, but it's the whole time course of concentration. And this here is drug effect, will be the time course of drug effect. How does the drug affect the body over time? And that's called a pharmacodynamic model. It has the two pieces linked together.
And you did analysis on the propofol concentrations in this case?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And in relying on publications, and I believe you'd mentioned these, I believe it was yesterday, but in your analysis in this case, did you rely on the two publications shown here on this slide?
Correct. These are a publication about pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, first author being Dr. Thomas Schneider.
And the principal investigator in each of those?
Me.
I'm sorry?
I was the principal investigator. And it's just one study with two publications.
And these were done, I think you'd indicated, at Stanford?
This was done at Stanford, physically at the Palo Alto Veterans Administration Medical Center.
Is it fair to say that these two studies depicted on this slide, in which you were the principal investigator, are considered the definitive studies in this area?
These are the studies, in particular the first one, which are programmed into most infusion pumps worldwide that give propofol using pharmacokinetic models. So it's available everywhere except the United States, the ability to use a computer to give propofol. And those computers are generally programmed. There's two models, but this seems to be the most popular, the model by Dr. Schneider.
And it's based on your data from these two papers?
It's the model in these papers, yes.
And is this the model you used in the simulations regarding propofol in this case?
Yes, it is.
And, for example, when you did the modeling in this case, did it take into account Michael Jackson's then weight, his age, and things of that nature?
Yes. Of the models that have been published for propofol, and there's a handful of them, this is the only model which includes the patient's weight and the patient's gender and the patient's age. No other model, at least that comes to mind right now, no other model incorporates all three, weight, age, and gender. This model does, so it allows me to be a little bit more precise in matching the mathematics to Michael Jackson.
And specifically in regard then to the second article, the influence of age on propofol pharmacodynamics, you relied on that paper as well?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And how did that model serve in regard to you relying on it in this case?
The drugs like propofol do not act in the blood. They act in the brain. And that's a very important distinction when you're talking